Hi, I'm Carcino.
Oh, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
No one knows Carcino and none of these.
There's so much going on in the world, and I'm just giving my 2 cents on it.
You go in and do a raid at someone's house, but you don't have an arrest warrant for them.
Oh, oh, I love being proven right. I love when I'm right. Because when I'm wrong, I'm right. And when I'm right, I'm right. Oh my goodness, I've told people for years that Dana White is an idiot. I tried to tell you and you wouldn't listen. Most of you guys just love UFC so much and you love the fights, so you don't pay attention when people are telling you something that's actually true. The guy is a moron who just happened to fall into a position because he was associated to a bunch of rich guys. He's not smart. He's never been smart. He's always been a dummy. He was working with Floyd Mayweather, carrying Floyd's bags. All he knows how to do is to kiss up to people, and they put him in position. He kissed up to rich people, and they put him where they want him to belong. The Furtadas, a bunch of racist Massachusetts guys, went to a racist Massachusetts school that Dana White's mother worked hard to put him in this school, even though he was the poor guy in there. And they liked him so much because he kissed up to them, they put him in power. Let him run his UFC and just say, I'm gonna take from boxing, and then, I'm gonna just take some of the things I like in boxing and put them in my own UFC. UFC, which was already being ran and already was a company who already had events and champions and everything else before Dana got there. He didn't invent the wheel. This isn't something he said, I'm going to start from the ground up. The UFC was already in existence. He just started making rules. And these rules that he was creating, well, let's just say these rules were in boxing. And he started bringing cutmen and having rounds. And, making it more introductions and making it more of a boxing affair but they just don't box when they get in the ring. It's just UFC rules. Now, Dana has lost so much money in the UFC that everybody knew it was when it was time to get out, when it was time to cash out, when this thing was going to go belly up. And when they realized that, oh gosh, we got to get out now. Everybody in this thing is not seeing the fall of this company, and it's coming. So they decided to sell right when they had the opportunity to jump out because they knew that there were no more stars in the UFC. UFC was dead when it came to stars. All their stars were international. There were no American stars they had except one who kept getting busted for dope. And nobody really wanted, they'll watch some of the fights, but it's a selective group of people. People in the group that they and Dana want to attract, those 40 to 50-year-old plus people. Those people don't watch UFC. Because those women dynamic and those numbers, they don't watch UFC. Dana was like, in 20 years, they'll be 50, and then they'll replace the other 50-year-olds. Yeah, they will. But guess what? They're going to stop watching UFC. And that's what's happened. The people that they like are gone. And now it's these young kids, and now UFC seems like this fad that they used to do when they were younger, that now that they're grown and they're adults, they don't watch that barbaric thing. They got kids. They don't want their kids watching UFC. They used to do that as a kid. They don't. No. So the parents really don't watch it. It's too barbaric for them. So anyway, he's back into this new dynamic in this new chair in this new seat because he needs a boss. He needs an ass to kiss. And now, since he's still in his seat, owned by the people that he damaged his own company by attacking and beating on his wife. After she hit him, he hit her back with more force. And, you know, an average night at the Dana White house. You know, so Dana White, the scum he is, woman beater there he is, sits up here, goes on television, and because the same people that own the ESPN, you know, they own the UFC, well, they have a partnership with the UFC. All the people that interview him are normally people from ESPN. And they all throw softball questions. They make excuses for him. Even when he hit his own wife, they made excuses for him. And then the parent company that runs and owns the UFC didn't do anything to suspend Dana. But they were losing money. So now here comes the Sheik, comes in with all this money, and he's basically financing this event. Now, why would Dana White need somebody else to fit the bill? Why would the UFC need the Sheik for? Why would Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy, they need the Sheik? And those two hate each other, but they got a common friend in the Sheik. The Sheik's going to come in there and help Dana White cover his losses on this UFC event when he's competing with Canelo. The prices are through the roof. He's a terrible, terrible salesman. Dana White couldn't sell a goddamn shoe. He's horrible. He's making it off the backs of everybody else, and now he thinks it's about him. He's the pitch man. I'm the man I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna do that, and all my genius moves. All the Dana White moves have come out to be flops. London, we're gonna take over London, flop. Everything, and he's lost the company millions in his ventures, and the company of the UFC is not geared around having failing quarters. And now here it is with a fight with Merab Deschamps going against Sean O'Malley, I believe. And in this fight, you're going to see a dynamic you probably haven't seen before. You're going to see something that's so incredible. You're going to be so amazed. You're going to be like, wow, I've been waiting all over for this fight. If you're somebody who's a diehard UFC fan, if you're a casual, you're like, who? Who the hell are these people? Then you market it for Mexican Independence Day weekend. You had the date first, but you know that Canelo fights in May and September every year. Why would anybody who's a general manager, president, or anything host an event on those dates knowing you're going to have to move it? Now, we're not moving for Canelo. Now, I remember you did the same dumb thing with Floyd, and it killed your whole pay-per-view going up against Floyd Mayweather and Marquez. Killed it. Destroyed your whole pay-per-view. And your hubris, you learned then. No, we're only moving for Oscar De La Hoya. Now, he's a big star. Mayweather, no. We won't move for Mayweather. And you took a hit. Millions lost in revenue. And said, well, we learned our lesson. Yeah. From there, we learned our lesson. We won't run up against Floyd. Now you got De La Hoya. And now you've fallen out with him because you and him both are the same dumbass cokeheads that you've always been. And now you're taking a hit here. Now you're running behind the sheep. The sheep got all this money, so you loving it. Now you get to kiss ass to somebody with money so they can finance your vision. First mistake he did was market this as a Mexican independent event. Your demographic is not high in the Latino community. It's good, but it's not high. Mexico and Mexicans mostly box. They don't do UFC. Boxing is what they do. If it isn't soccer, it's boxing. It's 1 and 2. You're not going to see that many Mexican NBA basketball players. Okay? That's an anomaly. You're not going to see a lot of Mexicans in the NFL. You ever notice that? There's not a lot of Mexicans out there. But they still watch the NFL and they still watch NBA basketball. A large majority of them. And they don't have any players, or maybe a few, that is in the league. So when you start to think about the general consensus of where people are as far as where they're lining up, what they're doing, the agenda base, you're looking at a whole different society altogether. You're looking at a generation that does not care about any of this marketing that you try to do with taking away from your demographic, which pretty much is exactly white girls and white men and the age groups of like 18 to 35 or 18 to 40, 42. You know, like that's your demographic. You know, that's what your core audience is. So you cater to that even on a Mexican holiday. Sure, you could do something for Mexican Independence Day, like have a fight on there for some Mexicans representing Mexican Independence Day. But when you make the whole event the center of attention because of it, and your mainstream audience is not Latino, and just because someone's Latino, this is about Mexico. You have a lot of fighters from Argentina, all over the place, right? All Latin countries. Right? And you have centered this just around Mexico because it's Mexican Independence Day. Now, other countries are going to be like, well, it's Argentina's day. And you got some Argentine fighters. The Ukrainian people might say, hey, it's our holiday. Now, you're going to center it around them? See what you're starting? But Data knows all. He's been doing this. No one is going to care about this situation. Now, Oscar claimed he's going to attend UFC 306 because their daddy, the Sheik, is telling them they better play nice because he's got their balls in his pocket. Well, I don't know if he has pockets in that, though. But This is the narrative. This has always been the narrative. So to me, things become very clear when they are clear. And the clearness in the situation is we need to have more understandings when it comes to how we view the people who we put in charge and everything else. If you like the UFC, if you want to see this event more than you want to see Canelo, then by all means, knock yourself out. No one's telling you not to go watch it. But people are seeing one thing for sure. Your core audience are not going to be able to afford $3,000 seats. Your core audience is made up of biker gangs and teenagers. You know, they love to watch the UFC. They love to watch this fighting. But your major demographic doesn't see this as something that's worthy of them paying attention to. And as I told you, what has happened to your business is the fact that all of these women are growing out of your sport. All the women, the men, they get older. Once they start hitting their 45, see, this has been a long time. See, what Dana thought was, well, all those stuck-up people, that don't want to watch the UFC, don't worry. Because your 20-year-olds, they're going to beat the 50-year-olds. They're going to replace those guys. Yeah, that's not what you want to say. But it didn't work the way he thought. He thought once those people get older, and they did get older, those people are now in their 40s, 45s, and above. Yeah, those people 20 years ago, those 25-year-olds who was loving the UFC, who was rocking out to it, now they've kind of jumped the shark and they've grown up and they've moved on to other things, Dana. And the reason why they've gone on to other things when they get older, because now they are grandparents. Now they're doing grandparent things. They've let go of the childish things that they did when they were 25 and then they were in their 30s. They grow away from that and they grow towards doing things and events with kids. And when they get older, they don't want to do the things that they were doing at 25, Dana. It's for a new generation. That sport is for young people. So that's who you're marketing to. The young and dumb. This is their sport. So why you're marketing to them? You know what this idiot does? He doubles down and says, after having a main event set in stone with O'Malley and Merab as the main event, with the females being the co-main event, he comes out and says, well, I think the main event is the spear itself. Yep, that's the main event. So he's saying that the spear is the main event in Las Vegas. I might show a movie between fights. Unsure how this is going to play out. But the spear itself, that's the main event. This is a love letter to Mexico. Oh, gosh. This your love letter to Mexico? We know what happens when you get to Mexico. You start beating your wife. Well, for fighters, it doesn't matter what they think. It's about the promotion and the marketing of it. Now, the Sheik is going to have to buy all these tickets because Sean O'Malley is sitting here like, but Sean O'Malley's 18-1 and Murab is 17-4 and 10 knockouts, and you're not even hearing that. Hell, I just gave it more promotion than anybody have ever gotten it, gave it so far. Just by saying that. Because they're not even talking about the fight. And all this ball bastard is doing is talking about the damn spear. Oh, this spear is crazy. It's gotta be crazy, insane. I'm like, I can't stand him. He's the worst marketing guy in the history of sports because he's a moron. He's a moron who's actually just been put in a place where he wants to be Vince McMahon, but he's not. He's actually had to kiss up to Vince McMahon to try to save this sport of his because it was failing so bad. He want to be Vince McMahon, but he can't. He's just a con artist, really, in my opinion. He's just a no good human being. And because of that, he doesn't know what he's doing. They just put this clown in charge and let him go ahead and do what he's doing and go about his way. And now they put him there because he's the face of the UFC. And that's your problem. Dana White is the face of the UFC. He's the face of the problems. What happens to the UFC if Dana White passes away? God forbid. I'm not wishing death on a man. But if he passes away, what happens to the UFC? Does the numbers take a drop? And if they do, if I'm the investors and I'm partners into this thing, I'm confused. Why are we having one guy be the face and we haven't gotten another guy or groomed anybody to be a replacement? What if Dana goes down? Then what? Who's going to step in? A total unknown? Well, we're going to have Joe Rogan, UFC. Who's next? You only know those two people. Right. You would believe Dana White owns the UFC. He does not. They just let him run it. They said, well, you know how this business runs. We're just going to pay you to run it. After all these years, Dana White still doesn't even own the UFC. Let that sink in. He has no ownership in UFC. He could be fired. But he acts like he's the president and like he's the owner of the UFC. I had a chance to buy stock in UFC and I said no. I knew this was a S-hole that was going to turn into nothing back when all the celebrities were buying into UFC. William Morris Agency, which owns it, were selling it to its clients. And I had a chance to get in a group to own some stock in it. But I would have to join the William Morris Agency, the agent that wanted to put us into an entertainment marketing position. Yeah, times have changed. They've gone from one situation to another. But when you look back at it, you start saying to yourself, sorry about that. So anyway, Dana White who is clearly out of his position and has been getting glorified a lot, has been losing money with the UFC. The UFC hasn't been making any money. That's why he's running to the Sheik. Why do you need the Sheik? Well, that's the bigger question. Why does Oscar De La Hoya need the Sheik? Why are they all running to this guy? Because he's the money. Why do they need money if they're profiting and everything is successful? What do they need with the money? Because they're struggling. They're getting swallowed. And when this whole thing blows up in Dana White's face, it's not going to blow back on the Sheik. It's going to blow back to Dana White. This is already a disaster. 2 weeks out, and it's the biggest disaster in UFC history. As far as money lost, millions are being lost. And of course, this is going to be nothing to the Sheik, because he's going to come in and fit the bill to make it look as if it's doing something. It isn't. At the end of the day, those tickets will be bought by the Sheik, and he'll distribute them how he wants. But this event is taking a loss. But Dana's happy because the company's getting a bailout from the Sheik. My thing is, he should have moved the date. He could have had it a week ahead of it. He could have moved the date. Arrogance, bravado. You know Canelo's fighting in September, Mexican Independence Weekend. Only an idiot would sit there and say, I'm going to plan something on those dates. They know to stay away from a Canelo fight, especially in Las Vegas, where Canelo normally fights the majority of his fights. But anyway, a businessman would know, if I'm in a pay-per-view business, I'm going to stay away from a guy that would drain my numbers or even split my numbers with. It just doesn't make good sense or good business. Now, when other people see narratives appear, we're starting to notice that there are areas in which everybody could grow from. And when you started trying to paint a narrative to go in another direction, then, that's when I start losing respect for people. So as you looked at the UFC numbers, they have failed since they've been with ESPN. Why do you think the UFC, when it was worth billions, would sell? Because the Furtadas knew this is the crescendo of this business. It's going to go to hell from here. I'm out. They knew when to get out and said, Dana, if you want this thing, here you go. But we're selling. Now, Dana, this is all he got going. Oh, yeah, let me bring this up, too. Guess what Dana White got to? The slapping contest. The slapping tournament where people just get up there and slap each other. Oh, yeah, that's the brain fart idea of Dana White getting behind that early. These numbers are better than when we started the UFC. We're going to have a pay-per-view slap fest. So, naturally, this is white folks. Black people will get in there and start dominating it later on. But now you got these big old white guys slapping each other. Come on, slap. Yeah. So it's the stupidest thing ever. White people will continuously invent sports so that they can dominate something. They just can't sit there and they be like, they're gonna dominate it till somebody black come along and be the smack out of somebody champion. They're like, we've seen slaps before, but we've never seen anybody slap like you. You're knocking people out on the first lap. Then they're gonna have to go to something else. Thumb wrestling. Dana White presents thumb wrestling. Yep. Thumb wrestling championship. Oh my goodness. So yeah, this guy's a clown. And he's gonna take a big L to Canelo. As Canelo, that place will be packed and sold out, and he'll be looking stupid, like wondering how they're able to market and put on an event in the same city and do better numbers than you. And they're gonna beat you in pay-per-view around the globe. Let's see how many people tune in to watch the UFC or they tune in to watch Canelo. Since you guys were swallowing boxing, let's see. Because those 50-year-old women and 50-year-old, they would watch a boxing fight before they would watch a UFC fight. Our demographics in boxing are higher and the ranges are longer. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm out. Shouts out to Kwame Brown, Bus Life, Jag Sports Talk with Jose Rodriguez. Welcome to HDII TV, Armando Black TV, The Star Report, Dreamers Pro, Ticket TV. And don't forget to go on my Patreon where I could be a little bit more freer than what I was today. Thank you.